Hi everyone. So today we are at historic Deerfield and we are going to do a little bit of a walking tour. I promised some friends down in um, Disney World that I would bring them some Massachusetts. So this is the fall and hopefully you'll enjoy this video. It will be on the historic side, and also we also have to keep in mind that this village is operational, so there are going to be people that are walking through, historians, teachers. This is also they have a boarding school from K all the way through high school, and which was built in 1929, so we will also have to be kind of courteous for them as well. So let's start by walking over here and I will show you the map. So as you can see, our leaves are starting to change here in New England, and we are starting to get a lot of leaves that fall. I know a lot of you that are down south would just as soon rather not, would rather see all the leaves. And but up here in New England, when we see leaves, we know that it means winter is coming and the rakes will need to be coming out very soon. So right here is the visitor center if you ever decide that you would like to come to historic Deerfield up in Massachusetts. This is the visiting center. It is one of the older houses here. These houses too, I must state that they have been around since the Native Americans, and I'm going to show you some of the sites where in 1709 was during Queen Anne's War. There was a terrible massacre, and I will show you and explain that. So here we are. Here is the map of historic Deerfield, which will show you the houses and all the activities. They plan activities mainly on the weekends, but it's a lot of fall fun things that we do up here in Massachusetts and have done for centuries, since the beginning of time. One thing about New England is that we pride ourselves on tradition and on continuality. So this town is all about continuing farming. It's a farming community, and just to be able to bring you some of this is very exciting for us, because people don't get to see it up close and personal a lot of time unless you visit. And a lot of times, many times you will see in history books, but you won't, they're not tangible. And as a history teacher, one thing that I always like to do is to make that tangible and make history tangible, so that the students can also see and hear. You'll see my husband with our dog in the background here. He said he was security for the day, so we'll see if I can get him on camera to say hi, but I don't think he will. So the first house that we're stopping at is the Stebbins house. It was built in 1799. It's obviously it's a brick home. It's one of Deerfield's, so that means that when they do have tours, you can visit the inside. And one thing about Deerfield is that some of these houses you're going to see have been passed down by generation to generation. So some of these houses have been in these families since 1699, when the village was actually established. This is a gas light. It is run by gas. It is they have kept a lot of their historical features. They have kept since the beginning. So we're just going to walk, and as you can see, because people that lived up here were farmers, and when the English settlers came in, and they obviously, as we all know, unfortunately, took the land from the Native Americans, a lot of people, what they ended up doing was farming. And like I said, this is a continuing education community. So some of these houses are lived in. So one thing that I maybe don't like is, and there's no way to stop it obviously, but one of the things that I always kind of gets to me is when I walk this is that there could possibly be air conditioners in windows, and you'll see some of that. You will see some of that, but it's a beautiful day out, at least this morning. The leaves are falling. I'm trying to get a picture of the mountains for you, just to show you. This is my favorite house. I love this house. I keep telling my husband I need this house. Isn't that a beautiful house? I love that house. So coming up to this next house, this is not one of Deerfield's purchased homes. This is one of the houses that have been here and passed down from generation to generation. It is a private residence, and I'll show you, it even says it on the door. And if you're wondering why someone would paint a house pink and blue, it is because those are primarily the colors that you would have had, let me see if I get a better picture, that you would have had in the 1600s. They didn't have Lowe's, they didn't have, you know, a paint shop. You couldn't go to Walmart and pick your paint colors. You had to use what you had. So many times they would blend colors together, making dyes, which they learned from Native Americans, and they would paint their houses that color. And the paint wasn't used as decorative format. The paint was used for purposes of insulating and preserving the home. So you want to talk about lead paint? You got it up here. We're coming up now to the Bement School. This house here is one that has been purchased. It is a business office. It is used as admissions. It's called the Barton House, and it's for the Bement School, which is the elementary school, and it's also a boarding school. It was founded in 1925, and I have people looking at me inside the house, oh Lord. And there are actually little guys here that, as Prince Charming Dev would say, there's chicken nuggets here that are actually living here, and they're from all over the world. There's also, what's also kind of cool is that the high school here, which is Deerfield Academy, I'm sure that you've heard of it, and if you haven't, you can go ahead and Google that. That has been actually featured even on Gilmore Girls and some of the other TV shows that are popular, and it's kind of, you know, kind of weird when you hear it on a show that's filmed in California, and here we are, you know, in Massachusetts on the whole totally different coast. This is Bement House. This is one of the school houses. Good morning. And over here, this house that you will see coming up, this brown house, is a private residence. However, this this brown house coming up was also featured on Little Women. It's the Little Women that was used during with Sigourney Weaver was in it, and a few. It's the newer one, and the side of the house was this house here. This was the side that they used for the house, and then the front of the house is coming up on the other side. But again, like I said, this is a private residence. But this side, the Allen house, is not. And this is where Joe came running down the street to meet up with her future husband. And here's the front of the house. This is one of my favorite houses too. I love this house. It's just so old. It's just so great. And it was built in 1734. Good morning. You're on stream. Say hello. You're on camera. Say good morning, honey. There's husband.
You got the Indian house over there.
Yeah.
That's a replica of the 1704 surviving house.
And we have over here we have another beautiful home will be coming up, and I'm trying over here. I'm hoping be able to get a picture, sort of. But as you can see, up here in New England, you see all these gorgeous postcards of all the leaves that are changing. And every time New Englanders see these pictures, we're like, yeah, kinda. But you kind of sort of embellished quite a bit there. Because as you can see, and partly it's because of the weather, we have some years that are better than others. But partly it is because of the weather that we've had, and it's been so rainy and cold. And like I said, you see, like, this is a house that is not purchased by it's a private residence, and there's an air conditioning in the window. Sometimes I feel like, you know, I think Deerfield should just ask, can you just please put those air conditioners like in the back of the house? Maybe just to preserve the history. Again, we have another gas light. And over here we have the history workshop, where if you are a teacher, you can bring your students up here if you live in Massachusetts, or surrounding areas, states I should say, and you will be able to go through some of those workshops. There is a fee, of course, but it's not as expensive as what you would think. So here is Historic Deerfield History Workshop Museum. Another beautiful home. Silver and metalware collection. It's open today. So this would be a typical New England town. This is what it would look like. Usually in a town, you can always tell a difference between a town and for a community because of where the church is located. If the church is located in a central area, which this one is, it's back the other way. Just the kids were going to school, so I started this end instead of going the other way. So where the kids are going to school, I didn't want to be, you know, in there streaming and have someone be like, you know, what are you doing? Because up here in Massachusetts, streaming isn't as vibrant. You know, walking around with your cell phone, talking to yourself, people tend to look at you a little weird. You might be accused of witchcraft, who knows? Especially this time period. So let me just show you the mountains. I'll just take a pan. And as you can see, the leaves are starting to turn, but not great. Usually it's more colorful. But even so, it is very picturesque. And here is another private residence. You can even see the windows are push-out screens because they do have to keep them as close as they can. But obviously they also have to have protection from winter months too. I mean, let's be real here. So this is my favorite house that's coming up. On the right, it is used in a lot of weddings. A lot of people do try to book this house. I tried to get my son to book his wedding here, but that wasn't gonna work. He's not a history buff. So down here we have I'm sorry about the jumpiness. I'm walking with my cane, so my knee is a little out there. But this property begins here, and this is what I mean by farming. So you can just imagine, begins here and goes all the way, and there's the house. That's the main house. This house was also one of the houses that were used in the Underground Railroad. People that came from the South were hidden in this house for a time just to get them up to Canada, or as far north as they wanted to go, actually, because, you know, the quality of life was considered better. I'm not exactly sure if that's a true statement after doing a lot of research. I tend to differ, but that's just my own opinion. And this is called the Williams House. It is very beautiful. This would be a mansion for the time period, the 1700s. And again, a lot of the, like I said, I'm just panning now the rest of the street, and we're going to cross the street. So if you can see, I'm starting to zoom in. This is the end of the street with this brick house. And we have another home here. And we have a home here. And we are going to cross the street. I wanted to point out to you that you will see rocks and what is hold on, we just have some cars coming. I don't necessarily want to be in the way of cars. May not be a good thing. See, you down in Florida, you have to deal with people. We have to deal with cars. Yeah, we're having a nice little visit with apparently Bo.
He's so friendly.
He's cute.
I've never walked him before. He's massive. Come on over, pal. Come on.
Here we go. I'm going to try and see if I can get a picture from behind. And I'm going to show you back in the 1700s, I think it was 1704, there was the Queen Anne's War. And 47 people were killed in the massacre. The rest of the, let me see if I can get down here a little bit. The rest of the town, which as you can see is not a very big town, and the rest of the town was roped together and they were dragged off to Canada by Native Americans. Some of these homes have been rebuilt by the families, you know, obviously back in the day. There's still, here's a back view of the mountain. And again, you can see the colors, but it's one of those things that are kind of, you know, it is what it is. And there's husband again with our dog, Tommy. So it's just a very pretty walk down the street. Many people that do live here take advantage of that almost every day. And again, here is another beautiful home. So as I was saying about the massacre, 1704 is when the massacre occurred, and the Native Americans burned part of the village and kidnapped the people that lived here and brought them up to Canada. where they obviously were um, basically like prisoners of war, to be honest, because I really don't want to make anyone too squeamish with the actual events that occurred. So let's just kind of leave it at that. And it is now a driveway, but this is where it leads down to. This driveway right here is the path. This was a path that this was the path that they basically kidnapped and brought people down and made their way into the mountains and kept going. All the way down, and they brought them to Canada. It was very, very, very obviously traumatic, and many people died. Many people didn't even make it to Canada because it was in February. And as you know, if you think about February, you think about your history classes. February, if you're taken out of your bed and being kidnapped, you necessarily were not ready for the elements. And up here, it is cold. It's cold here today, and it's only October. So in February up here, the weather can be down below zero, and it's not as though they have their LL Bean jackets and parkas and boots, winter boots that we have today. They had, some of them were barefoot. Some of them were, here's that beautiful house I like. Close-up picture. So yeah, it really wasn't picturesque. It was just like in Salem, the Salem witch trials. Massachusetts does have history that it's not proud of, and taking land from Native Americans. I mean, talk about a debate for your high school history classes, where you can debate that's better. So we are coming up to another private residence that is pretty much decked out for the fall season. A lot of times, especially in historical places, a lot of times people have to follow the codes of the rules of the community. And with keeping the colors the same as the house has always been, and windows, things like that. One thing that they did not have in the 1700s was Halloween. Halloween is a pagan ritual, and Halloween did not come into play until the 19th century. So even though we see a lot of Halloween decorations now, up in a community like this you won't, because of the rules that everyone has to play by. Up here we have an Indian house memorial, and apparently which is a children's museum, and I'm not really okay with the whole just Indian. I really wish that they would change that to Native American, but it's a replica. It was one of the homes that were burnt down. from the 1704 massacre. And to show you this was built in 1698, and it was built by the Mills, and it has withstood all this time, which is what I think is so great about history. I mean, think about it. These houses were built in the 1600s, and some of them had to be rebuilt after the massacre in the 1700s, but still, I mean, it's just amazing how they have stood the test of time. This house is one of the newer homes, and how you can always tell a newer home is by the architect. This has Greek Revival, which Greek Revival on a building was not prominent in New England. It was a new style. It was down south for a while, and then as people migrated up north for various reasons, they find that they want some cultures of home, and it's a very beautiful house. I'm just not a Greek Revival person, but you can see that the architect of this house and how pretty it is. So we're doing our walk here. This was built in 1848, so like I said, it's one of the newer homes. And it is considered a cottage from the Greek Revival. A lot of these in this community, they are still farmers today, which is why we don't want to disturb the animals, and we'll just stay on the direct path, because people do have to live, and they do have to do their their daily lives, and I don't necessarily need to disrupt that. I'll see if I can pan just so you can see the mountains. It is very pretty. It's picturesque, but the colors are not there. And again, that does have to do with, unfortunately, the weather and photosynthesis. And I'm not a scientist, so don't quote me on that. Historical scientist, maybe, but not a science. And again, this is a private residence, and yeah, as you can see, there's another air conditioner. Oh, killing me here. But yes, these streets are actually lined with trees. It's a tree-lined street, which in Massachusetts sometimes is kind of hard to find in a community setting. I mean, you can find neighborhoods that have strategically put them there, but these nothing has been strategically placed here. This is what it is. This is is the farming community that dates back all the way to the 1600s, which is kind of cool that, if you think about it, you actually have to have these houses passed down, or Deerfield will come in and buy them from you. But yeah, you actually have to have it passed down in order to live in the house. You have to have some kind of a connection. They're not letting just, anybody buy. So as much as I love this pretty house, when someday it goes on the market, I won't be able to get it. But it is very pretty. And it is also a very, very, very stereotypical, I guess you could say, of a house, especially where now, entering this little town. And if you look over here, and again, this is all original. This hasn't been changed. this would be where you would hook up your wagon or your horse if you're coming to visit. So I wanted to point that out because again, it's very, very historical. And I'm coming up to another private residence. And it's very pretty. It's very peaceful up here too. And for my very first stream, I'm kind of glad I picked it. I don't have to answer a lot of questions. And the people here that I'm running into have been very helpful in trying to tell me some of the history, but one thing about being in New England and being a history teacher and being in history analysis, you try to just get their perspective, I guess, on what you have. Deerfield Inn was always an inn. It wasn't as modern, obviously, as it is now, but it was an inn. It is where a lot of people stayed, including George Washington, when they passed through here. And let's let this truck go by. And it's also the site of where a lot of people get married and have their receptions now. But it is one of the oldest inns in New England until you get down towards Boston. But this is not a man-made community such as, say, Sturbridge, which we may visit on another day. This is actually a farming community that was built in the 1600s. And you can see where the church is. And a lot of people in New England at one time were, it was primarily a Congregationalist community. It didn't have, a lot of different religions until later when people started migrating. And so you'll notice the difference where a lot of times when you're going on different tours, you'll go into a church and be like, oh, this is a pretty church. And you'll notice there's no center aisle. And people are like, why isn't there a center aisle? Well, because it's not a church. Congregationalists wouldn't believe in a church. It's a meeting house. So they would use the room. And meaning a center aisle would be non-existent. So anytime that you are taking a tour, whether you're north, south, east, or west, you will see, if you go into a meeting house, if you go into a church and there's no center aisle, it is considered a meeting house at one time. Now I'm sure, people take over and move on, and oh boy, this does smell good. I will just show you their menu real fast. This is their lunch menu. And this is their snack. They call it in-betweens, which is kind of funny. And here is dinner. And they're hiring, so anybody that's looking for a job, you can come work up here and dress up. This now is a gift shop and a bookstore, and at one time it really was a bookstore. Kind of a very early modern library, but you traded secrets, because obviously in the time period, the one thing that you were mandated to do is read the Bible. So, when you're kind of doing books, it kind of got a little bit testy, especially in this time period because of what was going on down in Salem. And people are kind of like, okay, well, we don't want that up here, so we're just going to stop it while we can. This is the post office, and it really was a post office. And it's the third meeting house, like I talked to you before. The design was based off of a meeting house. So you have your steeple, and then you have where the post office is. And it was a United States Post Office. So they used to come with, when you heard Pony Express, yeah, here we go, guys. Pony Express. Okay, we're going up, we're walking up now. I'm going to show you the church. It's beautiful, it's huge. And a few more of the houses. This would be considered the center of a town. Where we just came from would have been the country part of the town, or the suburbs as we would know it as today. But in the time period, you lived farther out. And this is the first church in Deerfield. It's pretty, it's big, it's pretty. And over here, to show you. Okay. And again, it's very busy because we are entering the school area. And I just want to be respectful of the school. Some of these houses are used as dorms for the school when the village is closed, which is why you see a lot of activity up this end. Husband is across the street. He doesn't realize that. We're going to wind down the stream, and he needs to come back. So, with that being said, hi again. I hope you enjoyed my very first stream. I know it's a little rough. I will also be doing another stream in just a few minutes of a place that's just down the street where Christmas is already in bloom. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in a bit. Bye.